What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Angle of Pursuit podcast. Back for another live stream. We'll be talking NFC win totals here in a little bit. Give people time to come in, see if anybody wants to join us this evening. But Brian, for about a month, we've not had sports. Like, I've been watching replays and highlights. Literally anything I can get my hands on. I was watching Aussie Rules football at one point. Like, trying to get anything I can. It looks like we may have NFL draft. It looks like we may have UFC from a private island. Which
I
one?
just think I don't know, man. Like it's kind of gauge like what Dana White's goal is here. I mean, is he trying to become the most hated man in America, or is he just that?
You mean the most loved man in America for giving
Well,
us
that's what I
something to
mean.
watch?
Yeah, like he's definitely there's a drawn line in the sand right now for people that are either agreeing with what he's doing or people completely opposed to him just continuing to go along with UFC like nothing else is going on right now.
Well, it sounds like they're trying to do it the right way. They're going to like have people come in, do like a quarantine setup, train for a few weeks, make sure everything's good. Because like one person gets COVID, like the whole operation's toast. And if you're watching, if you're joining us tonight live, thank you for joining. Make sure you mash that subscribe button. Make sure you hit the thumbs up and leave questions and comments in the chat. We'll try and address them as we can. But Brian, it's going to be something that I can bet on, something that I can watch, something that I can. It gives me hope. It gives me life, I assume we'll be locked down for at least the rest of this month, if not longer, probably longer. I'm thinking like June, but if
I sure hope not.
If they plan it out right and they do everything right and they're actually able to get the fighters to the island. That's the thing that I don't know how that's going to work, because obviously getting people in and out of certain countries is a challenge. But the light at the end of the tunnel, live sports, I can't wait.
I am clamoring for anything live. I've watched so many recorded old college basketball games, old football games. It's great reliving these games, but because you already know like what the endings are of these. It's you wind up turning it off, or you lose interest and you turn it on at those key moments rather than being able to sit down and have an excuse to sit on your butt for 3 hours and watch a sporting event. Live sports, especially being able to bet, is probably something that I'm most looking forward to. Just like you, like we're big degenerate gamblers, so anything to bet on. I mean, I haven't dabbled with it, but I know you can place bets on the iRacing series that we have going on right now. Mm-hmm. Like, I just read a report today. Some driver lost sponsors because he rage quit, which is like, it kind of harkens to every real person's like life playing video games and how angry we get. So
that's the thing. There's always that one person who gets so mad and wants to quit and wants to stop, and it's hilarious to me. There's League of Legends and like esports. There's like drone racing. There was the push-up challenge with Bet Labs. Like, the people are coming up with shit just to have a reason. Like on this weekend is gonna bum me out because it should be Masters week. Today should be the par 3 contest. I think on Sunday I might just put on like some Masters gear, throw on Tiger Woods' final round from last year, and then just pretend like it's the final round from this year. But that's where we're at, unfortunately. But Brian, we're here to talk some NFL win totals. We got the AFC knocked out last week, so if you missed that, make sure you go back, check that out. Review that, give us some comments. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks for joining us. If you're listening on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you happen to get the podcast, thanks for downloading. But Brian, let's jump into it. Given about 5 minutes, so we'll see if people trickle in. But welcome everybody to the Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football and sports betting home over at fakepigskin.com. I am your host, Kyle Robert. You follow me on Twitter at @NotoriousKRO. With me once again is Brian Twining. What's up, Brian?
What's going on, Kyle? I apologize about the strobe lighting going on with my camera right now, as it kind of seems that the lighting is not perfectly set up yet, which hopefully we'll get that settled.
It's really setting the mood, and I'm kind of here for it. So,
anything to lighten the mood in today's world.
Yeah. So we'll go through. We'll talk all of the divisions. We'll talk our best bets. And all that good stuff. So, Brian, without further ado, let's dive in. Let's talk some NFC West, and we'll start with those NFC champion San Francisco 49ers. Over under set at 10.5. Right now, the under seems to be getting a little more action, minus 115. This is a team that won 13 games last year. Do we really expect them to fall off 3, 4, 5 games in order for them to hit that under?
10 wins is a really difficult number to kind of predict in the NFL, especially coming off of a season like they've had. And they really haven't done a whole lot in free agency. I mean, They lost Eric Armstead, but they haven't really done, or they've re-signed Eric Armstead and they lost DeForest Buckner. Mm-hmm. But other than that, they haven't done a whole lot as in terms of adding or any subtraction. So I really don't see this team being any worse. So, double-digit wins is probably pretty attainable. However, we're looking at a division now that's going to have 4 legit teams that we could see a division again where all 4 of these teams are going to have a chance of making the playoffs with the improvement of the Cardinals now sneaking up from behind.
Yeah, well, and I think that's where we're going to have to figure out where we are with this division, because in terms of talent, in terms of on the field, like the Niners are stacked. They're also going to have D Ford and Quan Alexander, hopefully, for the whole entire year. More stability along the offensive line. Hopefully Staley's there all year. Hopefully Kyle Juszczyk is there all whole year. We saw Mostert. We'll see what they do with the running game. But there's a lot of pieces that if all of them are healthy and they don't get plagued like they did last year, you feel a little bit better about the team. But then you think, like you mentioned, the rest of this division is crazy stacked. And we'll start with their rival up in Seattle. Their over-under set at 9 wins. The over is getting pounded because apparently everyone loves Seattle and Russell Hustle and Bustle Wilson. 9 is their total, minus 130. Obviously, these two teams played for the division last year, basically came down to the final couple weeks. The Niners ended up getting it. That final, was it Thursday night or Sunday night game?
I think it was a Sunday night.
Yeah, and then, it basically put the Niners in the 1 seed, and Seattle went to a wild card and helped propel San Francisco to the Super Bowl. But for Seattle, obviously, we saw DK Metcalf break out. Chris Carson's a stud. We'll see what Rashad Penny happens. They have some pieces you like. They also have some question marks on both sides of the ball. And it really comes down to what Russell Wilson could do. Are you as optimistic as the masses seem to be on the Seahawks team?
At the current number at 9, I am fully on board here. I did a little research kind of leading into making my picks and just kind of looking into all these numbers. And the Seahawks have gone 8 straight seasons with 9 or more victories. And, if that doesn't show like how good this team is coached, I don't know what else will. And if you look at, they're like the masters at these close games. They always seem to figure out a way to win these games at the end of the, when the gun's going off, and they have that X factor back there behind center and Russell Wilson, who just has the knack of making the plays when it's needed. When it comes to looking at teams and their potential win totals, I'm looking at teams that really haven't lost too much or gained, and with the coaching behind them and that star quarterback. And Seattle fits the mold perfectly. And I don't see any reason why they're not going to contend for the top of the division or a wild card spot.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so here's my thing, and I'm looking because, like you mentioned, they were in a lot of 1-score games, and I remember last year it came out a ton of places. But basically, what they did is they took all the teams that had 1-score victories and turned those into losses, and turned the losses in 1-score games into wins, and to see kind of how things would reorganize and how records would shape out. The Seattle Seahawks were 11-5 last year. If you flip all their one-score wins, they're 4-12. That's wild. And like, I'm with you in terms of Russell Wilson's awesome, and he sure does a hell of a lot for this team, and they have pieces, but like, I feel like from year to year, there's a lot of kind of regression to the mean in terms of, one-score wins, one-score losses. I guess my big thing is, and we'll have to go through the rest of it, is if I'm assuming that they're falling back, if I say they're 7-9, 8-8, and a little underwhelming after an 11-win season, who's in this division is taking it? Is Arizona ready to make that leap? Their total is set at 7.5. People are hitting the over. It's at -120. If we assume the Cardinals, who won 5 games last year, but another year of Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins is now in the fold. They have Kenyon Drake to hopefully be healthy for the whole season. Fitzgerald, Christian Kirk, they need offensive line help. They need a little bit of something on defense, but they will have plenty of picks. Kingsbury, another year with his system to kind of iron things out. Is there a possibility that, we're looking at a 8-8, 7-9 Seahawks and maybe an 8-8 or 9-7 Arizona Cardinals?
I mean, it's definitely possible, but with the Cardinals, like, I see that offense as being one of those, just, they're going to be a juggernaut this year. However, they're still going to have to kind of fix their red zone issues that they had last season, and those are where the coaching is going to come into play. And with the absence of OTAs and all that stuff, and trying to get D-Hop implemented into the offense better, and trying to get Kyler Murray a little more familiar with how they're going to run their red zone stuff, they might run into some issues when it comes to trying to be more successful in those scoring opportunities instead of settling for field goals, which could hurt them in those close games against teams like the Seahawks and the 49ers in the division.
Yeah, and I go back and forth with the Cardinals. I feel like they're a team that'll be really fun for fantasy, a really tough team that'll be really fun to play at in a Madden. But in terms of winning games, in terms of but we saw last year with Baltimore where all of a sudden Lamar Jackson, it clicked, and he was able to do what he needed to do in his first full season as a starter. Could Kyler be that guy this year?
I think we could see Kyler Murray wind up being the number 1 fantasy quarterback when it's all said and done. But do we see the Cardinals' defense being able to stop people at the same rate that Baltimore's was? Which, no. I mean, if you're asking that question, there's like no way possible that that's going to happen. So
yeah, and I think that's completely fair. So the only team we haven't talked about in the West is those Los Angeles Rams. Their over-under is set at 9. -135 is getting pounded on the under. The over is +115. We saw this team kind of come to fruition last year and kind of fall apart down the stretch. Jared Goff was exposed a little bit. Obviously, Todd Gurley is no longer with the team. He's out of the picture. They brought in Jalen Ramsey, so what does a full year of that do? They still have Aaron Donald. They still have pieces on both sides of the ball that get you really excited. This was a team that looked awesome when Cooper Kupp was there. When he kind of went out of the picture, the offense seemed to step back a little bit. So maybe having him and Cooks and Woods and the emergence of Tyler Higbee. I mean, there is stuff to like about this team. I guess it's just like, if we're looking at this division as a whole, like, they can't all either all these teams are going to be around 9 wins, or there's a crappy 1 or probably 2 in this bunch that we're not really, kind of diving into. So I guess let's start here. If you had to pick a team to win the division and a team to kind of finish second, where are you putting your chips?
I'm probably going to ride with the defending champs and go with the 49ers to repeat. I still think they are probably the best team from top to bottom on paper. And I think another year with Garoppolo and Shanahan, I think that's really going to pay. They're going to have to add another wide receiver with Emmanuel Sanders leaving. But I think they repeat. And then I think it's really going to be a battle between those other three teams. I mean, I'm not trying to take the easy road out here, but I can really see a scenario where San Francisco, say, goes 12-4, and then the rest of the teams are all in that 8-8, 9-7 range, and they're all battling for that last, wild card spot.
Yeah. And that's why part of me is like under Seattle, over on the Rams. Like the some of the stuff that happened down the stretch for the Rams and all those one-score games for Seattle, I could easily see that stuff flipping and kind of balancing out. And the Niners, I'm with you. I think they're the class of the division. I think they're the class of the NFC. I mean, in terms of roster from top to bottom, they're top 3, top 4. They're adding a top 15 pick this year, another first rounder. To kind of help set up some of the stuff that they lost when they lost to Forrest Buckner, but hopefully help the back end, maybe add a playmaker like you mentioned with Emmanuel Sanders no longer in the picture, and another year of Garoppolo. But yeah, Garoppolo's interception problem became a thing, and it's a little worrisome if you're picking this team to kind of go the distance. But if you're talking about a team that you really need them to win 11-5 gets you there. 12-4 gets you there. I feel like that's very much in the realm of outcomes. And I just, Seattle, like,
I am admittedly a huge Pete Carroll hater. I'll get that out of the way here. Like,
is it the chewing gum or the clapping or like the pom poms? Like what is this like the overall obnoxiousness?
It's growing up in Southern California and just having to listen to all of the USC bandwagon fans in San Diego talk mad crap during all those national championship runs, and then which all ended with an abrupt halt when Vince Young found the corner and ended USC's hopes of continuing their dynasty. But like it all started back then. I just not a fan of Carroll or the way he runs the Seahawks. They're a successful team. You can't hate on greatness, but I just don't like him personally.
Right with you there. And so maybe that's delving into my Seattle a little bit, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like the Rams are going to come in with everyone being like, well, Todd Gurley's not there and they fell apart last year and they are an aging roster. They are missing some important pieces, but like, I feel like with that passing game, I feel like Sean McVay is a really good coach. And I feel like this is a team. I feel like the Rams go 9-7 at worst, 10-6, unless things just like fall apart and they're like 6-10, and they're looking for a new quarterback going into next year. And like you mentioned, there's a lot of realms of outcomes in this division. So in terms of me throwing down my hard-earned cash, it's probably not going to be here. Unless unless we're talking about the Niners, because that's the only team I feel really good about and feel like there's a lot of pieces, everything's in place for that to happen. So
yeah, they're easily the most solid team in the division.
Mm-hmm. Let's head to the NFC South. There's a lot going on here. There is a lot going on here. As we already mentioned, Todd Gurley is now an Atlanta Falcon. Their win total is set at 7.5, and people are taking the over. It's funny because they released those horrific jerseys today, when I was looking at their win total, it was at 8. I think they knocked them down to half a win just from the jerseys coming out.
For the replacement jerseys,
those things are god awful, but yeah, people like the over. This is a team that 7 games last year. A lot went wrong for this team. Obviously, coming off that meltdown in the Super Bowl, there's still a lot to like there, but injuries were really, derailing this team every time they turned around. Gurley replacing Devonta Freeman, that's a wash at best. But I don't know. It's hard to read what to make of this team. I feel like the Super Bowl year was kind of the culmination of what this roster could be. And now it's kind of coming back to reality a little bit. And I feel like they're like an 8-8, 7-9, 9-7 team that I'm not sure I love pounding the over, and I don't know if I want to bet on them going 6-10, 7-9.
Yeah, as far as the Falcons go, I love their offense for fantasy. They have so many dynamic weapons, and then you add Gurley, who's probably going to be a touchdown monster. But as far as like overall wins, I mean, they lost Desmond Trufant on the outside. What have they added? I mean, they have Deion Jones, who's really good, and
They lost Vic Beasley. They lost obviously they lost Austin Hooper, placed him with Hayden Hurst. They got Dante Fowler to replace Vic Beasley. They're trying to help their team, and obviously, once again, offensive line and patchwork on the defense is going to be a key for going into the NFL draft. And
they're going to find it. Yeah, and two, let's not forget about the addition that Tampa Bay just made, getting who could be probably the most efficient quarterback we've ever seen play the position, which makes Tampa Bay an even bigger threat now in the division. So that's not even going in the last couple of years, Atlanta could probably pencil in a win at home against Tampa, which you can't do that necessarily now.
Yeah, we'll talk about those Buccaneers and their new quarterback because I think there's a lot to dive into there for sure. But this is a team like I feel like Arizona, where we talked about, in terms of Madden, in terms of fantasy, like it's a fun team to talk about. But like in terms of getting actual wins on the field, I'm not sure I'm seeing them.
Yeah, no, I see Atlanta playing in a lot of high-scoring games, but not being able to stop very many people, and they're going to be racking up those losses rather quickly.
Yeah. So let's run through the rest of the division. The Carolina Panthers, 5.5 is their win total. I have a feeling we'll be discussing this team further towards the end of the show, so make sure you stick around for that. But Teddy Bridgewater is their new starter. They're not doing the Kyle Allen and Will Grier and injured Cam Newton, and they brought in Matt Rule. They brought in Joe Brady. The under is getting hit pretty hard here. I don't know what I'm missing here. Like obviously, they traded Trey Turner, I believe, for Russell Okung. Like Chargers fans are doing dances all over the field because of the trade, but I still think he's fine. Like their offensive line is a little bit better. They brought in Teddy Bridgewater. If him and Joe Brady and Matt Rule can kind of figure it out. They got Robbie Anderson to go with Curtis Samuel, to go with DJ Moore. They're fixing the defensive side of the ball. Now you add a little more in free agency and then the draft. I think this is going to be one of my best bets come the end of the show.
Ooh, man. Yeah. The Panthers terrify me. Like I like the direction that they're going in with adding Bridgewater, adding another speedy wide receiver on the outside. They seem to be going younger on the defensive side of the ball, but I mean, they're losing a consensus all-pro Luke Kuechly. He retired.
That is huge.
They let James Bradbury walk. He signed in New York. They've lost pretty much their entire defensive line. Dontari Poe signed in Dallas. I think we're going to see the defense that they kind of showed over the last second half of the season last year, where they were giving up, 35 to 38 points per game more often than not in the 2020 year. And no offense to Teddy Bridgewater, but I don't think he's the kind of quarterback that's going to lead his team in, 5-6 touchdown games on a consistent basis, even with Christian McCaffrey back there.
So you're saying I should be terrified of taking the Panthers over?
I like value. Don't get me wrong. We've talked about this before. If you're looking for a value bet, I mean, because this division, again, is another one. Like, even with the addition of Brady, who knows what we're going to get out of Tampa's defense. And then Atlanta, you know how they are. Carolina could possibly sneak in a couple wins, but it's going to be difficult for them this year.
I was looking at their schedule. They get the AFC West, so that means they get the Broncos, a team they could win, which is at home. They get Arizona at home. They get the Raiders at home. They get the Lions at home. They get the Bears.
Okay, I'll give them the Lions.
But I mean, they go to the Chargers. So like obviously it's not like I just need them to go 6-10. Like that's all I'm asking for. And I win my bet. So that's kind of where my head is at, but we can talk more about that as the show rolls along. Let's talk about the rest of this division. Let's talk about the New Orleans Saints. The 10 is their win total. Over -140. So this is getting pounded. And by the way, we're using Bet Online for all these numbers. So if you want to follow along, go to betonline.ag or I don't know, whatever those. Just search Bet Online. Yeah, you'll find it. This is a team that won 13 games a year ago. This is a team that had an over-under of 10 last year. Are we just pounding the over again with New Orleans?
As we've talked about this so many times, like we're not bettors when it comes to like values like this. Like you're almost having to bet 2-1 to kind of win anything. So honestly, I would probably wait till it goes up to that 10.5 or 11 mark to place my bet when you're getting -110. But they're in a very similar situation as San Francisco right now. I feel like they are clearly the class of the division. Reaching 10 wins for them should be, pretty much chalk now when talking about the Saints and the run they've been on the last couple of years. Now they do have a pretty difficult schedule. I mean, they're playing the same teams. They're playing the AFC West and the NFC North, so they get that vaunted matchup with Minnesota, who, they have some terrible experiences with them. So who knows how that's going to go? We get to see them play Green Bay. Chicago, I think, is going to be a good team this year. So
yeah, we'll get to talk about the NFC North because I think there's a lot to be excited about there. But if we have questions about where Carolina is, if we have questions about what the Falcons may be, we'll talk Tampa Bay here in a second. But that's 4 or 5 wins. You're almost say you sweep Atlanta, you sweep Carolina, you get 1 or 2 against Tampa. You're already halfway home. Like at what point would you consider betting the under when talking New Orleans? Is it 10.5? Is it 11? Is it 11.5? Like how high do I have to say, here's the total for you to go, okay, at that point, everybody wants the over, I'm going to take the under?
I think when it reaches that 11 mark, I'd probably go with the odds of betting the under there, just because they do have a decently difficult schedule, having to play the Northern Division and the West out in the AFC, who no matter what you say about those Broncos, I do think they are going to be a legit difficult matchup for this upcoming season. So, and then even the Raiders, like who knows what we're going to see if you have to go play in Las Vegas.
I can't wait till the 2021 show where we talk about win totals. And like, remember how much you love the Broncos? And I told you, like, I did that whole song and dance the year before, and you're like, no, I still do it. And how well that went when they went like 3-13 because they gave Melvin Gordon like 40 touches a game.
I will openly eat crow and just take in all of the hatred if some Broncos fans are betting the over right now and they just completely fall flat on their face. Don't worry.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we talked about them. I think there is stuff you brought up that is interesting, but I went down that road last year and it was not the best. So let's talk about the Buccaneers. Obviously, the quarterback Jameis is out. Tom Brady is in, and the whole Jameis interview where he's talking about like he feels like he's like something else because I was replaced by Tom Brady. That's how much they thought of me. Like I don't know I don't know what Jameis is doing. Too many trips to the Publix or what, but yeah. So let's talk about those Bucs though, because Tom Brady is now there. Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. Pieces to like, but offensive line woes. The defense has parts, but can they put it all together? Is this really a team where he's just going to step in and they're going to win 10 games? They're going to win 11 games. I mean, the over-under is set at 9, and the over is -130. This is a team that won 7 games last year. And we talked about, like, with the whole Jameis Winston stuff during free agency is, Jameis throwing 30 picks might have cost them 2, 3, maybe 4 wins. And if you're looking at a team that's coming in with a low schedule because of the crappy record. You look at the safety and the versatility of Tom Brady. The question is just like, does he still have enough to be good enough to get them to double-digit wins? And I'm not so sure they are.
Yeah, I'm lockstep with you on that. I see them being a 9-7, 8-8 team over the for the first year with Tom Brady. There's just too many kind of deficiencies on the defensive side of the ball, and there's just too many things to fix on the offensive line. Are they going to have a running game, or are we going to rely on Rojo, who you and I both love fantasy terms, and we'd love to see him kind of be unleashed? But for everything that Tom Brady is and how efficient he is and how much different than Jameis Winston, this is a difficult division no matter what we think about Carolina or Atlanta. It's hard to go to Carolina and win games, or it's hard to go down to Georgia and beat Atlanta down there. Especially him, again, going back to what's going on right now, the same thing that's happening with Arizona and Kyler Murray. How is Tom Brady going to get familiar with his pieces if they can't practice? So, we're going to see that kind of stuff affect wins over the fall and the wintertime once the season finally starts, whenever it starts.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. It'll be interesting to see if there is some shortened season, or if there's even like a season without fans in the stadium, like if that affects win totals, if they do anything with that, or if especially if it's a shortened season, like if they just basically cancel all the bets and put up new numbers, we'll see how that goes. But this team did sign Blaine Gabbert as their backup quarterback. Brian, if I set the over-under at 0.5, how many Blaine Gabbert starts do we get in 2020?
Oh, man, I'm going to go under.
I feel like I'm right there with you. But, if we see Blaine Gabbert, trotting onto the field and Brady, hobbling off, I guess it's something I can picture, something that, doesn't seem that out of place.
Yeah, no, I mean, if we're talking about a 42, soon-to-be 43-year-old quarterback who, he's taking his fair share of hits, and he's going to a team that has a turnstile at offensive line compared to what he had in New England. Yeah, so there is a distinct possibility.
I'm going to be really curious to see what he does and what that offense looks like, and if he's still able to run and chuck and do the things he needs to do to avoid those massive hits. Because one big hit from a defensive tackle and Tommy Boy is going to be sitting on the bench for a while, and we'll see. Let's talk some NFC East, and we'll start with your boys, the Dallas Cowboys. 9.5 is their total. Over is plus 105. Under is minus 125. 8 wins last year. The clapper is out.
Thank the Lord.
McCarthyism is in. Is that enough to get this team to 10 wins?
Well, it sure as hell better be, because why else make a change? You were perfectly average with Jason Garrett going 8-8, 9-7 every year. With the addition of McCarthy, if they don't reach the double-digit win total, it's going to be a pretty big disappointment with the talent that they kind of trot out there every week with re-signing all those offensive weapons. They got, we'll see what they do in the draft here, if they can solidify the back end a little bit more after the loss of Byron Jones. The other teams in the division are not looking the greatest. Philly's going to be an issue, but we all know who the G-men and the Redskins are. They're not really going to be doing much this year. So,
yeah,
I do think I would probably lean the over with the Cowboys at 10 or so. But as a Cowboys fan, I normally have some pessimistic outlooks.
Yeah, Byron Jones is out, but Clinton Dix, Gerald McCoy, Dontari Poe, Alden Smith is back for some reason. Let's see if he even plays it down.
That's embarrassing, by the way.
It's interesting. They're addressing issues on the defensive side. Obviously, bringing back Amari, bringing back Blake Jarwin, adding Joe Looney to replace Travis Frederick is probably something that needed to be done. I'm curious to see how that impacts the offensive line. Another thing that we were talking about potentially a modified preseason, a modified training camp, getting the offensive line to where it needs to be. I'm really curious to see kind of how that comes to fruition. But as you mentioned, in a division with Washington, with New York, and even Philadelphia, kind of like the Cowboys, like kind of a lot. And I think 10 wins is on the table. I think 12 wins is on the table. Like this is a team that should have won double-digit games last year. A team that was probably one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the NFC, and they didn't even make the playoffs. I think this is just removing the clapper. I think that's enough to get you to the two more wins and get you where you need to be.
I mean, I sure hope so, because they've been a Madden champion over the last decade or so, which does not help on the field.
Arizona. My mind stopped working. Arizona. How do I say? Tampa Bay? I don't know. We'll scrap that. So if we're looking at Dallas, we're also looking at another 9.5 win team in this division. That is that aforementioned Philadelphia Eagles. And it's interesting because if you look at kind of where the money's coming in, the over on Philly and the under on Dallas is where kind of the money's trickling in. This is a division that seems to kind of go back and forth between those two teams. Obviously, the Eagles are a team that played without Carson Wentz and was kind of part of why they weren't able to get where they needed to get last year. They had no receivers. I mean, it's basically Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert, and the corpse of Alshon Jeffrey. They won 9 games last year. I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like I'm missing something here because I don't see why everyone's so excited about Philadelphia. Is it just the assumption that we get a full season out of Carson Wentz finally, and it all comes together for a team that has parts at different levels that make you excited?
I think it's definitely kind of basing it on the fact that Carson Wentz would stay healthy for the full 16 games. And if they're going to go out and make some more additions on the defensive side of the ball, preferably at cornerback where they missed out on Byron Jones. I mean, they got Darius Slay, who's going to be a huge addition.
Yes, massive addition. They added Jalen Mills. They added Will Parks. They added Rodney McLeod. Like the secondary for this team was god awful. And I think playing Washington and playing the Giants twice a year makes it a lot easier to kind of rationalize that shitty defense, that shitty secondary. But, Dallas, I think, is going to throw it a little bit even more with McCarthy. I think there's they had to address it. They had to fix that. I'm curious to see how their offensive line works, if they can able to kind of keep that where it needs to be. But if I'm going to the window, I like the idea of taking the Eagles under parlayed with the Cowboys over and just fading all these fools and seeing where I come out. Because I feel like that could be a really nice payday for a minimal investment. I'm getting positive numbers both ways. Let's go, baby. Big for the NFC.
Yeah, you go for it. I will not touch any Cowboys wager with a 1,000,000-foot stick. The Eagles are kind of another one of those teams where they seem to play a lot of close games. They're always hovering around that 500 mark, even when they have bad teams. Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of turn it around with those additions on the backside of the defense, and if they can add somebody on the outside to catch passes.
As I mentioned with earlier, we were talking about the Seahawks. I'm looking at those. Basically, if you reverse their records in one-win game or one score games, your Dallas Cowboys would have been 13-3 last year, and the Philadelphia Eagles would actually have been 10-6. So they won when they won, they lost when they lost. So last year they were kind of doing what you expected them to do. They only gained 1 win, but that shows you my kind of optimism. I don't think they go 13-3, but if they flip half of those games around, all of a sudden you're 11-5, and that's over. That's cashing. So, let's talk. We can throw the Giants and Washington into a pot because, I mean, both the Giants, their over under is set at 6.5, even money both ways. Washington's over under is 5.5. little more money on the over, which I think is interesting. Ron Rivera obviously coming in to hopefully work his magic. We'll see what Dwayne Haskins is in year 2. I guess if you have to be optimistic about one of these teams maybe getting to 7-9 or 8-8, are you going Giants or are you going Washington?
Probably going to lean with the Redskins just because I think their defense is kind of, a level ahead of what the Giants have on the field. And we know with Ron Rivera, they're going to try to run the ball, which, kind of keeping games close is how the bad teams sneak out victories against better teams. Whereas the Giants, their offense is, we have no idea what the hell they're doing with Saquon Barkley. They really don't have anybody on the outside to catch passes. They're signing all these giant tight ends, Loivian Telolo, Eric Tomlinson. I mean, unless they're running a 2 tight end set and just pounding the rock. My confidence goes more towards Ron Rivera and the Redskins in the direction that they're going to kind of get that over 6-7 win mark.
Yeah. The one thing I will say is the Giants, like they kept Leonard Williams. They brought in Blake Martinez. They brought in James Bradbury. Like those are all nice pieces at, each level that needed it. The offense, it needs pass catchers like no other. But Daniel Jones, I think, showed enough even when people questioned him so much. And in a healthy Saquon Barkley, like there's both teams have stuff that you could get excited about, and it's like if you combine them, you have a 10-win team. But separately, there's just too much to be desired. I think if I'm going with one team on the over, I like the Giants over Washington, but I think 2 years, like not next year, but the year after, the Washington could be really good with Rivera kind of getting his pieces in place, and 3 years. And if not, if Haskins doesn't work out, they got Kyle Allen in there, so that could be their savior.
Yeah, just like we thought he was the Panthers savior last year.
I'm gonna still hold tight on that one. Let's talk the NFC North, because I think this is where a lot of interesting potential is, and I'm just gonna run through all the teams, and you let me know where your head's at with this division. So the Bears, 8.5 is their total. The over is plus money at 100. The under is minus 120. Obviously, bringing in Nick Foles to quote unquote compete with Trubisky. It sounds like by week 1 it'll be Foles' job, assuming
for sure,
assuming training camp and all that stuff, and he can kind of get where he needs to get. The Lions are 6.5. A healthy Matthew Stafford. They have some pieces. Obviously, losing the cornerback we just talked about, the Eagles. Slay isn't great. This is a team that could be really bad, 3 or 4 win again. This is also a team that could all of a sudden be 500. Who knows? The over is plus 105. The under is minus 125. The Packers are 9.5, minus 110 each way. Feels very Green Bay. Feels, probably a half a win too high, but because they get so much public money, that's kind of where they are. Obviously, this is a team that won 13 games last year, so for them to fall off 4 or 5 games would be quite something. But it was also a team that seemed to do a little smoke and mirrors last year, and find their way to a big run in the NFC. And then there's Minnesota. Their over-under is set at 9. Obviously, Stephon Diggs is now in Buffalo. We'll be curious to see what the impact of that is. They still have Dalvin Cook. They still have Alexander Madison's team that can run the ball. A team that definitely needs pass catching help, much like a few of the teams we talked about. They won 10 games last year despite some of their issues, still made the playoffs. The under is minus 120. The over is plus 100. So if we throw out Green Bay and we're just talking Bears, Lions, and Vikings, all of them have plus money on the over. If you had to pick one to be your favorite out of this trio, where are you going?
Man, if Chicago makes the commitment to go with Nick Foles, I'm probably going to go with the Bears, just knowing his familiarity with the Nagy offense. They already have kind of their offensive scheme set up with wanting to run the ball. He's got some nice weapons on the outside. I really think that Nick Foles could make the difference for the Bears, limiting his turnovers going into 2020.
We saw this team like 2 years ago look good, and it's a lot of their roster was kind of the same. Not a lot changed. But the Mitchell Trubisky factor just became too much to overcome last year. The question is, can they overcome it this year? Are they able to go to Nick Foles and not have that be an issue? But the Bears have a lot to like. They have pieces on both sides of the ball. Obviously, Khalil Mack's an absolute stud. David Montgomery another year. Allen Robinson.
They still got Tariq
Cohen. Like there's little unique things. It'll be interesting to see. Matt Nagy is kind of in an interesting spot where if the Bears look good and kind of rebound from what was last year, I could see him being in their coach for a long time. But I could also see things going really south and then him kind of being on the outs and end up as an OC or something next year it's somewhere else and all of a sudden refining his game. But yeah, so like I think the Bears winning 9 or 10 games is very much in the realm of outcomes, despite kind of where the money's coming in. Detroit, as we mentioned, they're a real wild card. If I had to bet them, I would probably go under. The Vikings are interesting to me, but I don't know. Is this basically the NFC's version of the AFC South, where we're going to have 3 teams go 9, between 7 and 9 and 9 and 7?
Yeah, I definitely see the Vikings just kind of they haven't like been able to perform at the level that we kind of expected them to. Since that year when they made the NFC Championship game, they've kind of just increasingly gotten worse over the years. I mean, they're losing Everson Griffin, who's a huge disruption on the defensive line. Yeah. Stephon Diggs is gone. I mean, how good is Adam Thielen going to be when teams are solely focused on him? How good is Kirk Cousins? I mean, we're really going to have to see that.
Nobody knows. I don't think we'll ever know.
Yeah, we have no idea what he's doing. I think the team that's kind of on like the path of like forgiveness and the coach that could turn it around is Matt Patricia in Detroit. Like I know they've kind of lost a lot of pieces. He's had a lot of familiar faces from New England. He's bringing in Jamie Collins. He's bringing in Shelton. He's bringing in all these kind of veteran guys to kind of implement the same style that he had in New England. And we're seeing like Brian Flores doing a similar thing in Miami. I like the Lions with the way they're going. And speaking of the Lions, we had a question here on a comment from Nate asking if the Lions are going to, if we see them trading down twice, if they're going to avoid the quarterback to kind of let teams kind of jump up on there. I don't really see Detroit going quarterback here at their spot. I think they're going to miss out.
I think they're definitely a trade candidate once. I don't know if I can see them going down twice. But I do feel like they're in a great spot where someone's going to want to come up. And if that ends up giving them a couple players that they're able to implement this year, they're able to, clean up the offensive line a little bit, maybe add a playmaker, maybe add some help on the defense, maybe replaced Darius Slay on the back end. You add a couple guys, you add a Grant Delpit, you add, one of the offensive tackles, all of a sudden that trade is looking great. Plus you maybe get a future pick just because there's teams like the Chargers, teams like the Dolphins that are going to want to come up. And if they're able to kind of pit them against each other and kind of get a little extra juice out of the orange, they could have a nice payday that helps, kind of propel them 2 or 3 seasons. And then all of a sudden we're looking at, Detroit 7-9 feels like a great number, and potentially even 8-8 in a division where, we could, like we said, we can see the Bears falling apart. We don't know what to do with the Vikings after the team players are losing. We like Green Bay, but this is a team that won a lot of games that, their schedule kind of broke the right way and everything kind of worked out, and Aaron Jones turned into a freaking phenomenon at the end of the year. I don't think that's out of the question of the Lions kind of stepping forward, but as for draft day, I think they're one of the big teams that could potentially trade unless somebody goes up to where Washington is and Chase Young falls in their lap, then obviously they're not going anywhere. But if Young goes too, or even if Yeah, I think if Chase Young falls to them, there's no way they pass there. But if he's gone, I could see them absolutely making a trade.
Yeah, I could even see them making 2 trades just because, I mean, we're going to see Burrow go number 1. We're going to see Tua likely in that 3 to 5 range. And then whoever that first team is that really wants Justin Herbert. And then, the forgotten man at the quarterback position is Jordan Love. I mean, going into towards the end of the college football season, we had a lot of scouts saying that he was potentially the most talented guy coming out with a lot of Patrick Mahomes-like skill set. So if they can kind of build up and get like a plethora of picks or like some key players to kind of plug in for this year, looking more towards next year, I think that's probably their best move for this season.
Or even if somehow they're able to finagle out of that one pit out of the 3 and go back a little bit and still get Herbert or Jordan Love, and then you have a future for replacement for Stafford and you got other pieces. I mean, that seems like a win-win move right there, especially because, like you mentioned, Jordan Love is getting buzz. I've heard that he's like the second best quarterback in this class. I've heard people say that like Tua is actually the 4th, and like the quarterbacks could be all wonky come draft day. But yeah, I think the Lions are going to be one of those teams, if they play their cards right, could have a lot of fun and make some serious moves. Okay, so Brian, let's talk about your best bets. We have 3. I'm going to let you run through them, and then I'll jump into mine. So shall we talk about those Detroit Lions? Yes,
even though I just talked about how much I love what they're doing, how I do think Matt Patricia is the right guy for the job. I've always been kind of a Matt Stafford supporter. I think with the departures on the offensive line, I know they've added a few pieces. They're going to find it even more difficult to run the ball. I mean, they've already shown that they're one of the worst teams running the ball. They're still going to run into tough defense in Minnesota, even minus some of their key pieces. Chicago beefed up their D-line and their linebacking crew, re-signing Danny Trevathan. And Green Bay is going to continue to add pieces to their defense. So I could see them potentially getting swept in the division, and that's 6 losses right there. And then they would need to, go pretty much almost undefeated in their non-divisional games in order to kind of even creep near that number. So I like them under this season.
Yeah, and it's at minus 120, and I think for good reason. Like we both mentioned, there's a lot to like about what their future could be, but that's the future. That's not this year, and that's assuming they make some trades, and we'll see. And this is also a team that if Stafford's like, yeah, my back's just not there, and they draft Jordan Love or they draft Tua or they draft Herbert, and they go, that's our quarterback of the now instead of the future. This could be a really another ugly season where they win 3 or 4 games, and all of a sudden, they're looking at, kind of a rebuild on the fly. Let's keep it rolling. Let's talk about your next best bet, and that's up in New York. Let's talk about those Giants under 6.5.
This to me is just kind of based on, I mean, they're going to lose two to Dallas, as they should lose 2 to Dallas. I do think Philadelphia improved enough. They're going to beat them twice. And they're more than likely going to, at best, split with Washington, because no matter how bad Washington winds up being on offense, I do think their defense is going to continue to improve under Ron Rivera. So, again, this is another team looking at potentially 1 win in division, and then they would have to, win 6 games out of the division. And, even with the addition of James Bradbury, I don't think their defense is there yet. Their offense, they don't have enough pieces for Jones yet. Teams are going to stifle the run once again, and they're going to find it difficult to get wins, even though they will put points on the board.
Yeah. No, and I think this could be a fun team like Arizona, where their offense looks good, but their record isn't very good. There's questions on the O-line. There's questions on the defense. They did get some help, but we'll see how impactful that can be in year 1. Your final best bet is the Carolina Panthers under 5.5 minus 120.
I love Teddy Gloves, but they're going to have a really tough season, losing all-pro linebacker Luke Kuechly, losing the aforementioned James Bradbury, losing Don Terry Poe, losing Mario Addison. They've basically turned over their entire defense and handed the keys to Teddy Bridgewater with two dynamic wide receivers and added Robbie Anderson, who, unless we're running all streaks in Madden, I don't see them being able to move the ball on a consistent basis other than implementing the same game plan they had last year, which was give Christian McCaffrey 30 to 40 touches a game. And in that division, amongst three good teams with really good veteran quarterbacks, they're going to have a tough year in Carolina.
Well, Brian, this is where I'm going to have to go ahead and disagree with you. I am taking the over on Carolina. I am going with Teddy Two Gloves. I'm going with Joe Brady. I'm going with Matt Rule. I know the defense got there was a lot of overturn in the defense, but I think it's for a reason. I think there was aging. I think there was injuries. I think there was inconsistent play. I know they lost some pieces. Luke Kuechly is going to be a tremendous blow, but if they're able to put the parts in place and go 6-10, I'm hitting the over at plus money. I will take that shot every single day. And by doing this, I'm fading Tampa. I'm fading Atlanta. I think New Orleans is going to be really good, but like if Tampa's 7-9 and the Falcons are 6-10, Carolina can get to 6-10. Like I think that's very much in the cards.
One thing I forgot to mention about picking them with the under is the fact that they're playing the NFC North, who is probably going to boast three of the top 10 defenses in the NFC.
Yeah,
potentially.
or the Bears suck. The Vikings take a step back, and Detroit's a train wreck. And then maybe they get 2 wins there. Who knows? But if you get,
I just don't see it happening.
And that's fair, and that's why it'll be fun to go head to head, and we'll have to revisit this as the season goes along. When they start the year 0-9, I'll be like, well, I guess I'll take the L. But right now I feel good. My next pick, and we'll see how you feel about this one. Those Dallas Cowboys, I'm taking the over, and I don't like. So all my 3 bets are all overs, and I don't like doing that. Typically, going over is a bad strategy just because it's just like more often than not the under is the play, and I like to bet unders. But
we see who the optimist is here.
The 3 that stood out to me are all overs. I'm going full optimism, and I'm going back in your Dallas Cowboys. McCarthy, just give me 10 wins. Give me 2 against Washington. Give me 2 against the Giants. Split Philadelphia. We're halfway home. Just find me 5 other ones somewhere. I feel like 10, 11. I mean, like I mentioned, this team should have won 12, 13 games last year, and the clapper got in the way. So give me your Dallas Cowboys. And for my final pick, the San Francisco 49ers over 10.5. We talked about that division. I have a hard time seeing a team that talented, that well coached, just completely fall off. And losing 3, 4, 5 games, that feels aggressive. Obviously lost a little bit on the defense in losing DeForest Buckner, but they were able to add a full, hopefully healthy year of Quan Alexander, hopefully a full healthy year of D Ford. They got that mid-round, 13th overall pick, turned that into a stud receiver, put Jerry Jeudy or CeeDee Lamb on that team, use that final first rounder, or they could do a lot to solidify this year and going forward. And in a division where Arizona's interesting, the Rams could be falling off, Seattle, we'll see. I feel like 11, 12 wins is where they should end up, and with the over. So those are my 3 best bets.
Okay, with those last 2, even though Dallas is only set at 9.5 with plus money, who do you see having the better overall record?
Between
the
Dallas
49ers
and
or the Cowboys?
The Niners. I think the Niners go 12-4. I think the Cowboys go 11-5.
That's fair. And as far as the Cowboys go, again, on paper, they should win double-digit games. It's just a matter of whether or not they can put it together.
Getting Garrett out of the way and bringing in McCarthy, I think, is going to do just enough to flip over a couple games. And if they can do that, I don't know. I don't see it going. I don't see it going poorly. And
and then we'll have our hearts ripped out in the divisional round at home to the Giants, led by Daniel Jones.
Do we know if Dez caught it? That's the question.
Oh, don't start with that. It was clearly a catch.
If you're enjoying the show, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube. We are here every single Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll be talking college football totals in the coming weeks. We'll be talking draft, pre and post. We'll talk season, training camp, potentially. We'll see. Who knows? But if you are enjoying, make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you are leaving questions in the comments. We're happy to address them in future shows. You can always follow us on Twitter. I'm at Notorious KRO. Brian's at Greasy Rules 14. You can follow the show at FPAOP. Hit us up with questions. We're always down to talk. If you have dynasty drafts coming up, if you have dynasty trades you're trying to figure out, if you have league settings you want our input on, like whatever, bring it to our doorstep. We're happy to chat. We're happy to talk about it. And let us know what you think of the content. We're trying to keep it live and keep it fresh during quarantine season, and thankfully for these win totals and for free agency and for the draft and all this stuff to keep us busy. Otherwise, Brian, I wouldn't know what to do with myself.
I would be completely lost. I've most recently began watching the James Bond series over again, starting with Dr. No. So that's how lost I am without sports.
That's amazing. Best James Bond ever is.
Oh man, I really like Goldfinger.
That's
I like the movie. To me, it's Sean Connery.
Sean Connery, yeah.
Yeah, without question.
Yeah, it's definitely not Pierce Brosnan.
I will say Daniel Craig. I do really enjoy his take on it. He's more rugged.
I think he's number 2. I'm curious to see who the next James Bond is, but maybe we can have a show when we run out of content talking about the James Bond movies and rank our favorites and talk about that. But for Brian Twining, I'm Kyle Robert, and we'll see you guys next Wednesday. Peace.